So welcome to Exceptional TV. It's my honor to be here with you again today. And my name is Karen Judd Smith, and I am going to be giving just a short segment today about our three minds. Now, our three brains, actually. We might have three minds, but let's look at it from the point of view of three brains. Now, given that I'm trying to engage at least a couple of mine at the same time, I'm just about to add in here, so that I don't get echoes back, just give myself access here. Okay, so what are we doing today? First of all, Exceptional TV. Last week we had a really fun time listening to an indie developer in VR, Carousel Smith, and Joe Millward, who is head of the innovation labs in the TAFE educational system in New South Wales in Australia. And so they were really looking at some of what they could see as the possibilities of where VR, virtual reality, is going in terms of, especially in terms of education, but more than that, of course, gaming and what it can do for us as individuals, and how it is a whole nother level of experience, and therefore, especially in the area of education, it can add in whole new dimensions to that educational process that otherwise, oftentimes as parents or educators, we're often reaching for ways to really capture and engage those people that we're hoping can really learn new skills, new perspectives, expand their mind, expand their thinking in order to be more capable and broader thinkers and bigger thinkers, but also able to deal very well and effectively with the specific needs that they might have right in front of them. So that was last week, and I do hope that you will take a look at that interview. We also have had many others speaking about all different kinds of things, anywhere from dealing with the challenges of human trafficking, the issues associated with violent extremism and religion's role, both either in fueling that violent extremism or in many cases, and again, done well, can bring enormous resources to the table in the process of peace and peace, justice, and development. And what are those big words? What are those words? Sorry, I come a little bit out of the UN environment at times and tend to speak kind of a whole nother language. But really what that means is people being able to reintegrate into society, people being able to, in their communities, not just learn to fan the flames of their fears and their frustrations, which can break out into violence when we, as human beings, can't figure out any other way where we can make a difference and things can go more along the lines of what we are hoping for, our aspirations and our goals and objectives. And that's a little bit about what I want to jump into today is whether we're at the United Nations, whether we're in government, whether we're a politician, whether we're a parent endeavoring to guide our children or get back to our own work and agenda because we feel that's more important, or whether we're running a team of techs in a business, whether we're trying to do our marketing better online or trying to get our product sold because we know that it can be so helpful to other people, or simply because it's our livelihood. Whatever we are doing as human beings, this is a little bit about what I want to look at today and what I refer to as the area of our three brains. So what do I mean by three brains? Now, some people think about our brains in terms of, well, these days it's actually becoming better known that our gut is almost our second brain, or perhaps it's our first brain, because sometimes our gut works a whole lot faster than our thinking intellectual brain, our cognitive neocortical components of who we are as human beings. Some people might think in terms of the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of our brain, or the more artistic side or the more analytical side. And that kind of thinking we don't hear as much about lately, but it was really front and center for quite some time as the area of neuroscience was evolving in the 90s and early 2000s. We were beginning to get excited about even understanding what that could mean for us as human beings, how to notice the differences within us, how we function, and therefore how to even analyze ourselves. Why do we like to do that? Well, I've just noticed one of the things that I've been exploring a little bit later, and that's because I now have a new app on my phone, and it's tied into our solar panels that we have on our roof. Lucky enough to have that. But being able to get the feedback of when I switch something on in the house, how the energy use goes up or it goes down according to what I switch on and what I switch off. That awareness is almost without thinking too hard about it. Of course, there is some thinking involved, but without having to think too hard about it, it modifies my behavior. When we're about to walk out the front door, one of the things that we do or often like to do is take a quick glance in a mirror, make sure that our hair is not sticking up on end, that, maybe our eyebrows are not got their own bad hair day, whatever it might be. That feedback is helpful to us. Why does Socrates and the like say, know thyself? That's a reflective process. We get to see something about ourselves. Why do we like to do personality tests or ponder the possibilities of what our zodiac sign might mean for us? It's helpful to get some kind of insight into who we are and how we operate in the world, because most of the time, otherwise, our view is out. And we don't see ourselves as clearly, so we're always looking for other ways to get that feedback. That feedback is helpful to us in our endeavors to pursue the things that we value. And sometimes we notice that, maybe behaving like that when we get certain feedback from our friends or our significant others or teachers or mentors. When we get that feedback, we see something different about ourselves than what we were noticing when we were so busy engaging in the activity itself. And that can be useful. So we are naturally interested in understanding ourselves. Of course, this interest level and the analytical nature of that interest level varies with personalities, personal types, with our age, with our context and our environment at the time, what is the most pressing thing to us in any instant, the time of day. There are many variables. So time and timing is a factor in there. But again, having that feedback for us, that ongoing additional perspectives and insights that we can gain, that then we take into ourselves in our thinking and our planning and our actions as we go forward in life. So, why is it interesting for us to think about three brains? And this is what I'd like to spend a couple of minutes going into. Now, I've just got some notes here, and let me see if I can share some of these with you. And it's part of what I refer to as the human element. Now, this human element these, or the three brains, is a way of looking at the human element that is at play all the time. Why is it important to understand it? Because again, largely and so often, we focus on what we are paying attention to. And that tends to be the visuals and the audio. So we hear the words, we see what's in front of us. We're not quite as good at picking up on, and this is where sometimes our gut comes in, but even there, when you've got factors, they're all aspects of a number of dimensions that we're paying attention to in our life. But we do have that gut level response to things. But what is that, and why is it important? So allow me to go on into this, just a few little bits and pieces here for us to look at and to consider for today. And I'm not sure whether I've gotten all these things in a good place, but part of what I'm looking at here in these few little slides is the human element. And again, just reaffirming that this is always at play, even when we're not paying attention to it. So the three brains that I'm talking about are kind of like our most ancient brain. It deals with our survival. It's commonly called our reptilian complex. I like to call it the lizard brain. Actually, I like lizards, so, I'll show you a picture in a minute of some fantastic lizards, but that is a part of who we are. Oh, there you go. I'm not sure that exactly looks like you or exactly looks like me, but we do have a part of us that is very, very lizard-like. And it happens very quickly. It's all to do with our survival, and it is, yes, always at play. The next part of our brain, or next aspect of it, and these are kind of evolutionarily speaking, they've kind of stacked on top of one another throughout our growth and development over the millions of years of humanoids, human beings being around. And here, I have to say, my background is not in neuroscience or other than what I research and understand, but my training at least is not in these fields. So I draw, of course, on others' area. And these three brains, or triune brain, is not exactly the way the function of our brain is structured. There's no lizard brain area solely that then has another layer on top. It's not like that. This is a way to help us understand the functional nature of how we operate as human beings. So again, the next level is our limbic brain. It's dealing with our emotions, our memories. It's the neo-mammalian piece that is very, very social, that makes it so that we naturally pay attention to what our other simian friends are doing. It's the piece that makes us take a second look when we drive past or walk past a restaurant, for example, and we see people are lined up outside waiting to get in. We go, oh, that must be good. Our natural response. We want to know what our peers are thinking. Some to a much greater degree than others, but still as human beings, we tend to congregate, we tend to gather, we tend to prefer certain environments. And this is the social aspect of who we are. It's built in, it's hardwired into us, and that is commonly more known as the neo-mammalian, the neo-mammalian complex. Then, yeah, I thought you might like that one, and that's just we like to hug, to feel connected. Well, not everybody wants to, but and different times in our lives we don't want that. And at times we don't want a hug. But the point is, this is just understanding that we have these tendencies within us, that these are capacities, these are propensities that we have, and they are always at play. Our survival instincts are always on alert. We're paying attention to the body language, to the tone of voice in the other. We notice our peers. We see people walking together or walking toward or walking away, and they stir up certain emotions and responses or trigger old memories. These are things that are going on even pre-rationally. Then there is, yes, the strategic, logical, language-based executive brain that is more clear about the analysis, the logic of our thought. It's the neocortex is engaged. This, for some, is more the slow part of our brain. So let me just move out of that was to do with some negotiation stuff that I teach or whatever, but part of and understanding these elements, these human elements that are going on and that constantly play a role in our lives all the time, are important to our negotiations. They're important when we are, and most of our life is spent in some kind of a negotiation. Part of the reason you start up a conversation with somebody, sometimes it's just simply to share information, but quite often there's a motivation behind it. You're trying to position yourself to get something, or to offer something, or to get somebody else's attention. You're in a negotiation of sorts. But understanding what is going on below the surface, not just the words that we speak, not just the seemingly friendly handshake as we reach out to shake somebody's hand, but watching the body language, hearing the tone of voice, seeing the congruence between what is being said, the tone of voice, and what the body is doing, and not just the body in the moment, but the larger picture movement and activity, either of an individual or an organization, the body language of that organization. Sometimes we can hear nice things being said one way, but the way the organization acts might be another. Or you hear from somebody who is a manipulator, or perhaps even worse, a gaslighter. They say certain things that they know you want to hear, but their own behavior takes them in a whole nother direction that shows they are not actually concerned about you genuinely. They just understand your certain needs, and they're using that to their ends. So human beings are complicated. And mostly I wanted to just introduce you to this concept of having these three brains, and even perhaps more importantly, to understand that from a point of view of, and actually that little three brain session is not the optimal one. I just pulled it together quickly for today, pulled it out of something else. But really to understand that that we've got two of those three facets of who we are happen very quickly, pre-rationally. Maybe we used to call it kind of subconsciously. A lot of those things go on without us even thinking about. We react to danger even before, really dire emergence situations. We can react to that. Our bodies are geared to react to that. Our whole our survival mechanisms react to that. We pump out chemicals even before we've consciously recognized that we're in danger. So here it's just, that is the fast part. the first two of our three brains. In other words, 2/3 of who we are happens below the surface before we even get to think about why we are doing something and where we are going and get to the point of analyzing whether or not it's a real danger or not a real danger. And our skills and our capacities to, to be able to do that well are built through experience and over time, and we've got simple defaults that we go to. But even just for now, I wanted to get you to notice that you do have three brains. And perhaps next time you go to speak to somebody, and maybe you're in a negotiation, maybe you're just even talking, maybe you're even chatting, maybe you're just standing in front of them thinking, why on earth are you doing that? I'm sure you've had such moments. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's wondered why and could not quite comprehend what's going on. Absolutely, there is something going on. It's below the surface. And so one of the first things that an effective negotiator can do, one of the first things that you can best do to understand why and how, is to really listen. To ask the kinds of questions that the other person, not accusatory questions. And so this is where it takes some personal strength and practice to be able to step into that genuinely curious mode where when you don't understand, clearly there's something to be learned. Doesn't mean you have to agree with why the person does what they do, but in order to understand and therefore potentially figure out a better way forward for you and them or the situation as a whole, a key thing is to really take the time to listen and to notice and to understand what is driving them inside. What are their drivers? What survival drivers are at play? What social emotional drivers are at play? In addition to those that make sense logically, rationally, and in the bigger picture of our strategic aspirations in life that we might have put together and articulated as our goals and our reasons for doing things. But knowing that we got layers, and we don't always see our own layers that clearly. And that's where even those who are not necessarily our best friends, who often can challenge us, can be very beneficial because we can begin to see the impact that we have on others. And in those moments, we can begin to also see, maybe learn something about, that those things that are driving us, and to notice whether or not there's something that we want to keep driving us in that manner, or whether they need some modification or attention or care and loving care and concern. And sometimes all of us need that as we move on through life, having had all kinds of moments and all kinds of challenges that we face. So again, back to this. I mostly just today wanted to introduce the idea that you do have three brains, that there is this lizard part of us, the survival part, that is going to react faster than your thinking brain. And it is only going to do or seek to achieve the fundamental desire, our fundamental needs for survival. That's what it was designed for. That's what it does. That's what has kept humanity alive for as long as we have been alive. And sometimes those survival practices don't always help us become better at, let's see if we can get to, doesn't always help us work better with others. Sometimes The survival component is at odds with our social component. And how to balance those out in us, how to handle those two. And then, of course, as we saw, then there was this other element, and that is the more logical part of who we are, the more strategic part, the more language-based part of who we are. That is meant to be the executive piece, but sometimes we get hijacked by our lizard, or we get hijacked by our monkey brain, or maybe even sometimes our survival is overridden by our logical brain when inappropriately. There is no, what could you say, simple answer to all of this, as much as it's important to understand that we've got all of these three fundamental drivers at play in us as human beings. So if you're wondering why, when you ask your team, if you're a leader, a team leader, or even if you're just a parent asking your kids to do something that you think is totally rational and reasonable, if you're wondering why your request is not being heard, perhaps some attention needs to be paid to the social, emotional side of your counterpart that you're working with. Or perhaps some of the fears, the survival, the sense of, the fear of loss, the fear of not being able to sustain themselves, losing something, that's being triggered within them, and that needs to be addressed. Now, of course, the skills, the words, the phrases, the go-to activities that can allow us to pay the attention, to notice what is going on, and then to do something about these three brains. That's a whole nother level of activity and frankly, and learning as a team leader or a parent or a leader in whatever we're doing. But the point there is that understanding that we have these three drivers going on, sometimes visibly, sometimes not so invisibly, but understanding that they're always in play, and they all need some attention being paid to varying degrees in varying situations. And these are the things that make us human. These are the things that make, when we tie all of these together in a blended and varying, in a balance between all of these three that is in constant motion, that's what makes us fascinating as human beings and enormously capable of handling all kinds of dimensions of challenge in the world. So I just wanted to put out there today, you have three brains, two fast, one slow. And they each have their role, but it's important to understand these dynamics, and I wanted to share that with you today. I hope it's been useful as we take time to delve more into the human element, into some of the negotiation skills, or in the case, one of the areas of work that I do like to do, and that is to help especially our young emerging leaders become more effective in their advocacy and their as change makers in the international environment of the United Nations. That's just one of the things that I've done in my life. And as we do that, it's also really important to understand what's going on beneath the surface. We are these strange icebergs, and most of who we are, even as individuals, even with the ones that we spend most of our lives with, there is so much going on underneath the surface that they don't know unless they take time. And the same as vice versa is your knowledge and understanding of them. And yet when it comes to high stakes discussions, high stakes negotiations, and those high stakes happen every day with our loved ones, with our families, in our work, with our teams, in politics, every part of our life as human beings. Those high stakes happen every day. We make critical decisions, but what are we basing them on? I invite you to join me again sometime for more insights into who we are and the human element and the exceptional part of humanity. This is Karen Judd Smith. I am honored to have been with you. I hope you will join me again at different times. I probably won't be doing this at noon for a little while. I'm headed over to Australia, so the streaming time might be live, but come back and subscribe to exceptional.tv. You can go on and see the website there, or you can come in and into the YouTube channel. And I invite you to join us for more insights, information, and understanding about who we are and how we can be more effective, especially as we go on into this world that is still where our survival mechanisms are being constantly triggered and fired all the more frequently, as we live in a very volatile, uncertain, complex world that is our day-to-day life these days. I thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again another time. Have a good day, and stay well.